Welcome everyone to Middle East Breakdown on ME24. With you is Hayvi Bouzo and Dan Feferman. We're the co-founders and co-editors of Middle East 24. And as always, we're going to try to unpack ethnic groups, communities, history to really understand what's happening. But the Kurdish issue is one of those stories and historic struggles that have not been getting the needed attention, I think, historically. I don't know, what do you think, Dan? But, today we're going to try to unpack what's going on in terms of the Kurdish region in Iran, given that it is now in the headlines a lot.
One of the most overlooked and little understood issues of the modern Middle East. If you were to watch mainstream media in the West or Al Jazeera, you would think there's literally one issue taking place, and that is the Gaza, the Palestinian issue, maybe sometimes Lebanon, and now certainly, of course, everyone's focused on Iran. But nobody talks about the Kurds. And as we're going to discover on this episode with our excellent guests, we're talking about the largest ethnic group in the Middle East, maybe the largest ethnic group in the world that actually doesn't have a state.
Yeah. It's really hard to fathom, right? And we know about the struggles of the different Kurdish communities in different parts of the Middle East, in Syria, Turkey, in Iraq, where they have a better situation in Iraq because of the Kurdistani region that has been having some sort of, an autonomy, giving the federal system that they have in Iraq. But Kurdistan, Iran, today we're going to try to focus on what's happening there in terms of some art elements that are Kurdish. There were talks about some support that those groups might receive from the United States, that they could go into the different areas inside of Iran to liberate them from the Basij, from the IRGC-backed elements, the Islamic Republic regime forces. But then the other talks are also saying that, no, the Kurds do not want to be involved in going to non-Kurdish areas, and they actually would want to stay in only Kurdish majority areas. They talked about the lessons that they've learned from what happened to the SDF. We're going to try to unpack a lot of that. But before we start, we always want to remind our audience that they need to follow us and subscribe to us. Of course, follow our very minute-to-minute, hour-per-hour news coverage that we have on the Middle East, on social media, on X, on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, our YouTube for all of our exclusive production, video production, including our podcast, Middle East Breakdown. And of course, follow us and subscribe to us and give us the highest rating on your Spotify, iTunes, or whatever it is that you use for podcasts.
Absolutely. And, in addition to the podcast, we're producing, we're a new platform and the numbers are growing day to day. It's super exciting, Hayvi. People literally all over the world want to know more about what's happening in the Middle East from nuanced, from authentic perspectives from across the region. And our team includes, we always like to say, people all the way from Rabat to Islamabad and everything in between. And we try to represent those voices that are left out of the main discourse. And certainly the Kurdish voices are really, really left out of the discourse. And before we jump into this episode with our two excellent guests, and we're going to have with us on the show our good friend, our contributor, Suzan Quitaz. She's a Kurdish, Iraqi, Swedish journalist, news producer. She's worked from some of the top outlets in the region. And now we're very glad to have her as one of our contributors on Middle East 24. And we have with us also Diliman Abdulkader, a Kurdish-American policy expert, founder of American Friends of Kurdistan, who brings a deep kind of policy and research insights into this complex web of issues. But before we do, let's wish all of our friends, our Kurdish friends, Iranian friends, a happy Nowruz, which is now as we record this episode. And we'll wish all of our Muslim friends and listeners all over the world an Eid Mubarak, as Eid al-Fitr is now coming upon us, and as the month of Ramadan comes to an end. And so hopefully those who celebrate either of these holidays or both of these holidays can do so, and they can have a wonderful time with their families, with their communities, and hopefully maybe a sense of calm and of peace in our region.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. Like, we have now two big holidays that are happening, and, it's for both the kind of Muslim communities everywhere that are celebrating Eid. It's, after Ramadan, the fasting is over. It's time for people to go out and celebrate and like wear new clothes and all of these things. And for both the Persians and the Kurds, Nowruz is about new beginnings. It's about, freedom. It's about the new possibilities that come with the spring, and the kind of celebrating with fire. That's basically a representation of now. It's like such a sensitive and like timely holiday right now, given that Iran is on the verge of something historic, given what's
And we hope something good.
we hope something good. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. I don't know, Jen. I don't know what like I'm more on like the very hopeful side, just because I know that the regime in Iran right now has not been weaker. So I know that things don't happen like very smoothly sometimes, or there might be difficulties along the way, but we are on the verge of something much better than what we've been dealing with for the last few decades. What do you think?
I hope so. Currently, right now, it's tense. And, we have here in Israel, we're getting multiple missile barrages from Iran and from Lebanon every day. Just today, I think I've been down to the bomb shelter 4 or 5 times. And our friends in the Gulf are being bombarded. Oil and energy installations are being bombarded. So, we're obviously tracking these developments as best we can. And hopefully, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Iranian proxy, is trying to drag Lebanon into this war with Israel, and hopefully, the Lebanese state will finally do what it needs to do and confront Hezbollah. It's not enough for the Lebanese state to say we're not a part of this. Israel's never waged war on the state of Lebanon, at least in the modern era. But the Lebanese state does need to exercise its sovereignty and get rid of this Iranian proxy within its midst. But amongst everything that's happening in Iran, our last episode that we recorded, we're now going to jump into this issue of the Kurdish aspect of the conflict that's happening with Iran. Again, something that's not often talked about. So let's jump into it. So, Diliman, you mentioned the Azeris, for example, and we know a lot of commentators, outside commentators, have been talking about the different kind of ethnic mosaic that is modern day Iran. People often say Persians as sort of, another word for Iranian, but it's actually the Persians are just one of the historic ethnic groups within Iran. So I'm curious, maybe, we'll start with you, Suzanne, and then we'll Dilman, if you have something to add here. How do the Kurds in general, as a larger ethnic group, but the Kurds of Iran specifically, relate to the other ethnic communities within Iran? The Persians, of course, but the Baluch, the Ahvaz, who are, kind of the Arab Iranians, if you will. Is there a sense of a united Iran, or the possibility of a united Iran that has a place for all of these groups? Is there competition between the different ethnic groups? Is there kind of, okay, you guys are in the south, you guys are off to the east, we're off to the west, and everyone's just everyone, and one day we'll have independence? Or kind of what is the discourse or lack of discourse, or the relation or lack of relation between Iran's Kurds to these other sizable ethnic minorities that make up modern day Iran?
Yeah, I think to start with this question, it's important to say that half of the Iranian population, they are not Persian. I mean, more than like 45% of the total population of Iran, they are not Persian. They are the Azaris, the Ahwazi Arabs, the Baluchis, Lor, Turkmen, and then you have the Kurds. But the Persian identity has been enforced on this ethnic minority. So if it's not only the Kurds who are being oppressed. The same thing is with the Ahwazi, especially the Ahwazi, because they are Arab and they are Sunni. You have the Baluchi, who are about 3 millions. So it goes across all ethnic minority in Iran. And this is the problem with the Iranian state during the Shah and during the Khomeini. Is they impose the Persian identity on these ethnic and religious minority. The best solution for Iran, it's a democratic republic where everybody is treated as equal citizens, to have the right, to say, I'm Kurd, I'm Azari, I'm Baluchi, I'm Ahwazi Arab. But so is not the situation in Iran. We talked about the Kurds, but the Ahwazi Arabs, Al-Ahwaz, it's Iran's poorest region, while all Iranians' oils, it's in the Ahwaz region.
Right. The
Everybody,
irony of it. Yeah.
yes, And it's I mean, when I see people talking about occupation, but no one's talking about the occupation of Ahwaz. Ahwaz is not a Persian land. It was taken, I think, in 1925, and the people there are extremely oppressed. They are not allowed to practice their Sunni religion. They're not allowed to give their name, Sunni name, to call your son Uthman or Umar. And this is the situation. The relationship between the minorities in Iran, no, they work quite well. Like, I know the Kurds have a very good relationship with the Baluchis. They have good relationship with the Ahwazis.
Even this new Kurdish alliance has reached out to, for example, to other ethnic minorities to join, so we can all have one voice. So all the minorities inside Iran can have one voice. They've reached out to the Azeris, for example. They're talking about using the language of brotherhood. These are positives. The people in Iran are not enemies of one another. We have to acknowledge that. These are people who Suzan mentioned who have all suffered under different regimes, whether it's the Shah or whether it's the Islamic regime. So I think that's important. Of course, I mean, there's always tension. You're not going to say, oh, what about that one event? What about that one event? Or there's countries that influence, there's proxies that influence, but the people, they're trying to survive. So I think pitting the people against one another, I don't think is the solution. And the Kurds have already realized that. Listen, if we go, right, to topple the regime, how do we do this? We can't do this alone. Why not have everybody else come in and unite and join forces, including the Farsi people, including the Persians themselves? There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're saying you're Iranian, you're not Kurdish, you're Iranian, now you're just you're dividing instead of uniting, especially at a time when you need more unity than division. So I think that's not the right approach. The approach that the Kurds have taken is actually the correct approach. What we're saying is, nobody called for separation. Nobody called for independence. All we did was join our forces, which is a positive sign, because we all have one goal, is to remove this regime that has oppressed everybody in this country. So I think that's the outlook that everybody should be looking at it from.
Yeah, well, we know that historically there were the tensions with the Shah, and that now with the Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, who is basically, been a lead figure in the Iranian opposition. He's been somebody that people do call his name in protests in big Iranian cities. I understand that the Kurds have their own feelings about him potentially being the new Shah, or if he is what he, kind of what he talks about, which is like having a democratic system where he's just somebody who's a part of a coalition. Are there talks with him and his group? Where do you see this going forward, given the historic issues that the Kurds have with the Shah?
They've sidelined themselves. Reza's group has gone outside of the language of dialogue, has gone outside the language of coalition building. They see themselves as the only solution, which is not true. You can't say that, especially because you're shooting yourself in the foot. It's premature before anything has happened on the ground to say, I'm the only voice, it's me, everybody else has to follow me, and whoever doesn't follow me is a separatist. Whoever doesn't follow me, we're going to attack you. That's not the solution. I think their recipe is a recipe for disaster. I think if they want the best for Iran, if they want the best for the people that are suffering, whether it's Farsi, whether it's Kurds, Ahwazi, whoever it is, I think they need to have more of a dialogue approach. They need to be more sensitive. And they're not the police. It's not up to them if Kurds don't want to be called Iranian. That's okay. That's okay. We have to acknowledge that. The Kurds want to be called Kurds. But that's not the language they're using. That's a huge problem.
It's like historically, you cannot be a Kurd. Like, the Kurd is a Kurd, and it's
okay to say that.
100% okay, and absolutely the right to say we're Kurds.
But it's been considered a taboo. I mean, if you pay attention to the conversations online, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been historic on the ground, with the Shah, and that's been the thing that's been used against the Kurds, is that the Kurds can't be recognized as their own identity by all these governments. For the so-called opposition, with their majority of the supporters are in the diaspora, to call them to say, no, you're not Kurds. No, you're not Kurds. Do you think that's wise? If you see yourself, because now the Kurds are saying, wait, the Islamic regime is not allowing us to call ourselves Kurds. The Islamic regime is oppressing us because of our identity. Now, this guy wants to do the same thing.
I did not know
What's
that.
the difference?
This is new.
Yeah.
This is new. This is new
Yeah.
information for me. I did not know that there were attempts to not allow the Kurds to call themselves Kurds
Yep.
by the kind of the coalition that we're seeing and hearing about from like the Shah and the Crown Prince, the son of the Shah, and all of, you know, kind of that segment of the opposition.
Yeah, they don't allow. They say, "Oh no, Kurds are Iranian. Kurds are Iranian. Kurds are Iranian." You can't argue. You can't have a conversation like that. You can't have a conversation to a people, and also you shouldn't sideline and make your enemy the only ethnic minority that is the most organized, armed, and has the potential to topple this regime. You need the Kurds. Reza and your diaspora, you're not on the ground. You guys are kicking it in the West. You're not on the ground like the Kurds are on the ground. You're not on the ground like the Iranian people are suffering in the thousands on the ground. Tomorrow, if the regime needs to fall, it's the Kurds who have to sacrifice. It's the Kurds who have to fight. It's the Kurds who have a history since day one, since 1979, who have fought the Islamic regime. You need the Kurds. For you to already prematurely make the Kurds an enemy and make a statement about separatists and then try to be slick about it and not name it and not name the Kurds directly, but you know you made a speech about the Kurds because they created this alliance and your diaspora is just out to get to the Kurds. I think that's disingenuous. I think that's a recipe for disaster. They need to figure out a different plan. This plan is not working for them.
Yeah, the thing is, he doesn't call them even Kurds. He says separatists. And we all know what he means when he says separatists. You know, those one who call separatists, I give you an example. I interviewed what the Reza Shah called separatists, general of Kurdistan Freedom Party, PAKA. And the general said, we don't have anything against the Shah, but we have seen nothing from him. He hasn't reached us. He doesn't talk about dialogue. He doesn't even recognize the existence of minority, specifically the Kurds. While if you go to the general statement, in all his interview, he talks about the suffering of the Iranian people. He even acknowledged that the Persian, they too want to topple the regime. They have suffered a lot under the regime. What makes a lot of Kurds really frustrated with the crown prince that he's even scared to say the word Kurds. He has the golden opportunity, you know, to reach to the Kurd, to reach to the 45% of the Iranian population and say, look, I want to come, I want to represent you, I want to represent the whole Iran. Let's topple this regime, let's have a democratic state. But the only thing we hear is the Persian identity and the denial of others.
You mentioned on the ground, you mentioned armed, organized. I want to kind of take this back to the military issue that kind of sparked, again, the whole impetus for having this podcast and talking about this issue, and that for at least a couple of days captured international attention. First of all, what is the military capacity of the Kurds, right? And what role would you envision that this force, the Peshmerga, playing in kind of a military scenario? Are we talking about thousands of lightly armed, I'm assuming, troops coming across the border? That's something that certainly would cause a lot of trouble for the Iranian regime, but it's not something that can, storm Tehran and take over. So, is this something that plays into a bigger maybe American-Israeli strategy where they're providing the air support and the intelligence and the funding, and the Kurds and maybe some of the other groups are providing the sort of ground forces? Is it just a limited territorial play to just kind of carve out more of an autonomous Kurdish enclave in northwest Iran? Is it something bigger? Is it something more limited even? I mean, what was the scenario that was at play that had the whole kind of international media talking about this for a minute, and where could this go from here?
I was just going to say, look, the Kurds are not going to make the same mistake as they did in Syria. They're not going to march to Tehran, for example.
No.
Part of the conversation was if the Kurds were to go in early on in this war. I think that was part of the breaking news. The Kurds had demands. That means give us advanced weapons, so we're not using our AKs, our basic rifles, against a regime with advanced weapons. Give us air cover, make sure you protect us from the air, but also secure a no-fly zone. These are long-term demands that the Kurds feel that they can, it's a good deal for them to go in and fight this regime. On top of that, they expect the continuous airstrikes from above by US and Israel to continue to damage the military infrastructure of the regime in northwest Iran. With that being said, the Kurds also made it clear that we're not going to march to Tehran. It's up to, the goal is hopefully we go in and liberate our Kurdish areas will spark something amongst the rest of the country, amongst the Iranian people, amongst the other ethnic minorities, to also rise against the regime. So I think the solution is not only the Kurds. The solution is all of Iran. But the reason why the Kurds are focused because they're armed, they already organized, they already experienced fighting this regime, and they're ready to go, right? But also they share a border with Iraqi Kurdistan, which houses U.S. Interests, assets, bases, you name it. So I think this is the solution, the common sense solution, if there was a ground incursion, that the Kurds would be the boots on the ground in northwest Iran specifically. But again, I think the mistake and the fear mongering which kind of prevented this from ever taking shape, is that, the Kurds are going to get arms from Israel and United States and CIA's backing them. They're going to separate. They're only going to looking out for themselves. But with that fear mongering, and that was amongst supporters of the Shah of Reza. We have to make that clear. The Kurds are going to separate. They're getting arms, and they were the loudest ones to oppose this. Instead of uniting behind that and finding an opportunity to use that to also help the rest of the Iranian people, especially in Tehran, to rise against the regime. Because the rest of the people, the ordinary civilians, don't have weapons like the Kurds do. They can't face the Basij and the IRGC head on. The Kurds can. But I think, again, that was the diaspora, the Reza followers and his diaspora made another mistake by fear-mongering, labeling the Kurds as separatists, and then this idea kind of fell apart or went into the backdrop. But of course, the Kurds are always ready. They're just waiting for the right situation and momentum on the ground to take that step forward into Iran.
What is happening right now on the ground? Because where are the talks also with the United States? We've heard already. You mentioned how you do not want to see the same scenario of what happened to the FDF controlled areas. But in terms of now, there's a historic opportunity, obviously. The regime hasn't been weaker ever since it took over power. The operations are ongoing, and the regime is only going to be losing more and more power and influence. There is a historic moment, right? But are there talks with the United States, with Israel? Are there movements on the ground to actually take over at least the Kurdish areas? What's happening there?
There is talk, but the Kurds as population, they divided, so is the leadership, because they are asking themselves, why shall we commit to, to be the boots on the ground? What are we getting out of it? What are we getting out of it? And it's really important. We don't want to see another scenario where Kurds sacrifice 12,000 like we did with ISIS. And then where did it end up? What happened to the Kurds in Syria?
That was because they went to Arab areas too. In this scenario, what you both were talking about is where the Kurds only in Kurdish majority areas.
Yeah, but the fear is, and this is the fear, what if the US and Israel war effort fails and the regime stays in power? We're talking about a regime who are very brutal. Like 15% of people who face execution in Iran are the Kurds. What happened? Like, if the Kurds will rise up, if they will do resistance against the Iranian regime, and then the war ends and the regime is still in power, what will happen to the Kurds? Hundreds of thousands of Kurds will be massacred without any doubt. And this is a valid question. Before committing any boots on the ground, Kurds need to have assurances.
What do you think, Diliman?
She's absolutely right.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that's always been the challenge before you answer. That's always been the problem for the Kurds is these assurances, right?
Absolutely.
And we know how the Americans abandoned the Kurds of Iraq after in the 1990s.
Yeah,
it's about the guarantees. It's the Kurds don't. The Kurds are always known as the fighters. Historically they've been great fighters. But the Kurds are peaceful people. They don't want to fight. They don't have a state. They have to fight. They have to survive. There's a reason why a lot of the other ethnic and religious minorities in the entirety of the Middle East, not just where the Kurdish regions are, but Christians, Jews, they've all been persecuted. They've all been oppressed. Their numbers have all dwindled to, less than a couple of 100,000. But the Kurds are 45 million plus. There's a reason, because they never laid down their weapons. And they're historically, they survive and they fight the regimes that's oppressing them. To add to Suzanne's point, I think she said something very important, is that what do we get out of this? What if the regime survives? I think that's what the Kurds are waiting for inside Iraqi Kurdistan on the border, is that they're waiting for the timing. How much longer is the United States and Israel going to let this operation go ahead? Is it for 1 more week? Is it 2 more weeks? Because that's important. Maybe another month of continued airstrikes will weaken the regime enough to allow the people to rise. But again, the conversation is always, it's not only airstrikes. That's not the only solution. And that alone won't topple the regime or won't remove the regime. So I think the Kurds are also waiting it out and kind of studying, okay, do we have enough momentum on the ground? Is the military infrastructure of the Islamic regime weakened enough? Have their missile defense systems on the ground, have they been removed? Has the major leadership been removed enough to make a dent inside the country? I think that's another hesitancy on the Kurds, is that they don't know. I don't think anybody knows how much longer this operation will go in. I mean, the United States has invested 50,000 service members into the region, the largest since the Iraq and Afghanistan war. And I believe they're sending additional forces, Marine forces, into the region. So that may indicate a longer operation. But of course, you don't want to go in prematurely and the United States and Israel decide to end the operation next week. And then now the Kurds are fighting. Now the Kurds are basically free for the regime to tackle, right? We want to prevent that situation. And that's why the Kurds haven't really. There's skirmishes. So there's 2 scenarios happening inside Iran and outside of Iran as far as the Kurds. Inside Iran, the Kurds continue to be targeted. The civilian population continue to be imprisoned. So that tells us that the regime is still intact. They still continue to be targeted, the Kurdish population. So there's that layer. There's another layer where the Islamic regime is attacking the Kurds outside of Iran. So the Kurds in Iraq with drones and missiles, the Kurdistan region, 300 plus drone and missile strikes alone in this war in the Kurdistan regions. They're saying they're attacking U.S. interests or the political forces, whatever. But that's not true. Their civilians and hotels are being targeted.
Exactly. They do that all over
airports.
The 12 countries, and now Kurdistani region in Iraq. They've been doing this across the region.
Yeah, exactly. And the Kurds are facing that same thing. So they're being targeted inside Iran. The people are being kind of completely oppressed and silenced inside the country, while at the same time, the regime is attacking the Kurdish forces and U.S. assets in the Kurdistan region. So there's also another double negative. So I think the Kurds are calculating the timing of it. They want to get clear answers from the United States, especially. Are you going to stay? Is this going to be a 3-month long operation, or is it going to be a 1-week operation? What's the appetite of the administration?
What's the staying power, right? Yeah, that's the big one. As we look to kind of wrap up this conversation, I'm curious, at least from my perspective, it's hard to predict in any of these kinds of scenarios what's next, right? It's hard to say, like you said, is this 3 months? Is this 1 week? Is the regime going to fall? Or is the regime going to come back and then take out its even more oppression against different groups in Iran? You already see the amount of protesters being executed or tortured already, atrocious. I'm curious, though, as we go forward, let's say 1 month ahead, 2 months ahead, it's really hard to see more than that at this point. As far as the Kurdish element of this war that's unfolding, what are the key things from each of your perspective that we should be looking at, the things that we should be paying attention to, whether by key leaders, key statements, key movements, or maybe a lack of action is also an action in this regard. So maybe start with you, Suzanne, and we'll finish with you, Diliman, unless, Hayvi, you've got another.
I have, yes.
Okay, so just from my perspective, what should we be looking at? What are key indicators that something big is happening or not happening? What are the kind of things that we should be paying attention to in the coming weeks?
I think what's needed is the US, the Americans, and their allies. They should strengthen their relationship with the Kurdish leadership inside Iran and build on that alliances. I think it's really important, and this is what I hope to see. strengthening that relationship. But it should be based on like, look at the Kurds as a equal partners, as a equal political partners, because arming the Kurds is really important. But Kurds doesn't just need arms; they need you to see them as a equal political partners. This is what I would like to see.
Diliman?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Kurds can't be just looked at boots on the ground. The Kurds are diplomats. The Kurds are, they build bridges amongst ethnic and religious minorities. We've seen this in Iraq. We've seen this in Syria. They have a history of helping women and children and rescuing Yazidis, minorities. They have a history of empowering women in the region where it's not seen anywhere else in the region outside of Israel. So I think they could play a huge role in that. But I think the indicators is the Kurds we see positive sign that there's continuous conversations with the United States amongst the Kurdish alliances. And the Kurds have been pretty open about this, that there's an ongoing engagement with the United States. Once the Kurds feel secure, once they take that first step inside Iran against the regime, if the war does prolong, I think that's a sign that the Kurds got some degree of assurances from the United States. They're not going to go in without any assurances. So I think if you're looking for any signals, if you see Kurds fighting the regime, I think take that as a hint, as, okay, they got some degree of assurances, they got some kind of weapons, they got some kind of physical and tangible support that protects them from the air and the ground, and long-term, that they're not going to be betrayed if the regime falls. And tomorrow, a Jolani-like figure is made president or leader. I think that's a positive indicator that the Kurds got some sort of relief, knowing that they can be boots on the ground for their regions only.
Yeah, I think that's an important indicator and something to pay attention to as this unfolds.
I basically wanted to ask you both, I've been learning a lot about the Kurdish region in Iran from Suzan. Suzan has been definitely helping me understand a lot more of what's happening. But, given now that we are in the very historic time, I know that there are the concerns, there are the lessons of what happened in different areas. We know that, in the Kurdistani region in Iraq, there are some elements that are still there, that they are also inside of the Kurdistani region in Iran. But if you have, one message to send to the people today who are listening and watching, what would it be about the Kurdish cause? What could or should happen for the Kurds inside of Iran today? And, and also like the Kurds everywhere, like what would you like to say about the Kurdish cause and in this specific historic moment in the Kurdish region of Iran?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a historical moment only for the Kurds. It's for the whole Iranian people. And I really like through MA24 to pass this message to Pahlavi's supporters. This is a golden opportunity, not only for the Kurds, not only for the Ahwazi, it's for the whole people of Iran, for the Persian as well. Seize this opportunity. Be united. You all have one enemy, and this enemy has oppressed and has killed all of you. Put this racism and this, we and them aside, and just unite, because at the end of the day, Iran is for all of you. We are not going anywhere. The Kurds are not going. The Persian are not going. The Ahwazi are not going. And I plead to Reza Pahlavi. Yes, you do have support in Iran, but why don't you reach to the other people, to everyone in Iran? I mean, we just talked about the Kurdish alliance. These Kurdish alliance, there are 6 political parties. Only one of them, just one of them, who want to be separated from Iran. But the rest, they do want to be part of Iran. They do want to stay part of Iran. But all they're demanding is their political and cultural rights. And they're not asking a lot. And this is, I reach to him and say, unite, all of you. You need to unite if you want to topple this oppressive mullah regime.
Unity is significant at a time like this. I think stoking the language of division, as Reza followers have been doing, is the wrong approach. And I think, honestly, the biggest losers, if regime change does not happen, the biggest losers of this, of course, will be the people inside Iran, because it'll be a revenge tactic and it'll be a revenge action by the Islamic regime against the people, against the minorities, tenfold. So whatever we've seen now, it'll be even worse. Internet will be even more suppressed, and we won't know anything that's going on inside the country. It'll just be full-on purge against the people. That saddens all of us. We don't want that. So it's not wise, again, for certain groups to already jump ahead and call themselves leaders of this, leaders of that, or deny identities of other people who are also suffering alongside those same people. So I think the Kurds are not enemies of anyone. The Kurds are peaceful people. The Kurds have a right to say they want self-determination. There's nothing wrong with that. But the Kurds are also rational people. The Kurds understand that tomorrow they're not going to piece of Iran is not going to separate from Iran. That's just not practically speaking. But if there's an opportunity for self-governance, there's nothing wrong with that for the Kurds to govern themselves. Can you blame them? If you were in the position of the Kurds, if you put yourself in the shoes of a Kurd, if the Shah oppressed you and executed your people publicly, and then a regime, Islamic regime, came and executed your people publicly again on cranes, what's your response to that? It's the same thing. And then fast forward to 2026, that same person that's connected to the Shah who doesn't recognize you, now they fear for themselves. The Kurds are like, okay, we want these guys out, but then this guy wants to do the same thing. So I think that's the wrong approach to take. The Kurds are build bridges with the Kurds because everybody's going to need each other because we don't want a Syria-like scenario where it's chaos, or Iraq, for that example, chaos, civil war, minorities are going at each other, the Persian, the Kurds are fighting. That's not the country is going to be destroyed. Nobody wants that. So build bridges with your fellow people inside Iran. It's okay if Kurds don't identify as Iranian. It's not the end of the world. They identify as Kurds. Let it be. Let them call themselves Kurds. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Suzan Quitaz and Diliman Abdulkader, for giving us the time today. That was really insightful. I believe me and Dan, probably this is one of the
We
most,
both learned a lot.
because we both, like I said earlier, I was learning from Suzanne because it's basically one of those really undercovered stories is the Kurds in Iran. And I want to double down on what you both said. This is historic. This is historic for all of the people of Iran. This is historic for the entire Middle East region and for the world because, what Israel and the United States right now are fighting is pure evil. And, I actually do have hope that we're on the right track, that this regime will not be able to come back. But yes, the fear is there because it's a regime that has been infiltrating every aspect of this country. We don't know when the operations will cease and be like, okay, we did what our objectives were and we're going to move on. But I feel like we're in a place where it's really hard for this regime to come back, except the big question is what's going to happen next? How would Iran look like, in a year from now? Those are the questions, right? And that's what we're trying to answer.
So yeah, I'm glad we're able to have you both on and understand the critical Kurdish aspect of it. I agree, Hayvi. It's often underlooked, misunderstood. And what can I say? Certainly, as another member of a Middle Eastern minority group, I certainly wish for the Kurdish people, if not independence, certainly respect and equal rights wherever they live in the region. Certainly a group that has acted nothing but responsibly within the Middle Eastern context. And thank you so much for being on our show.
Well, thank you so much all for listening and watching to Middle East Breakdown on ME24. With you again is Hayvi Bouzo and Dan Feferman. We are the co-founders and co-editors of Middle East 24. Stay tuned to all of our deep analysis and coverage. We're going to have a lot of articles coming up, right, Dan? We need to announce.
Right. We are soon launching a new online sort of magazine journal that we will be launching and announcing soon. So stay tuned for that.
Yes, so you're going to get on top of our weekly podcast, our content creation, which is daily, where we have videos that are coming right from the region, from thinkers, analysts, journalists, people on the ground, sharing with you perspectives that you're not getting in traditional media or social media for that matter, about what's really happening in the Middle East. So stay tuned for those. And then the article section that we're going to have on our website that's going to also bring you deep analysis and articles about the developments of the Middle East that is also going to be daily. So stay tuned for that and give us the best of your ratings on Spotify, iTunes, whatever it is that you use for your podcast. And follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for the daily updates.
Awesome. And once again, happy Nowruz and happy Eid to all of those who are celebrating either or both of those holidays. And we'll see you next time.
Nowruz, guys. Good Nowruz now. Like, hopefully the, hopeful times will come. Hopefully. I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to be the...
You should be optimistic. Bye-bye, everyone.